Hello, welcome to Empower and Ignite Transformation Podcast with Alicia and Nicole. How are you, Alicia? I just want to check in and see how you're doing today.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm blessed. Today is a good day. I'm feeling good, feeling very energetic, motivated. I got this second half of this year and I swear I'm about to meet some of my goals. So,
Okay, look at you. Definitely. I think we always start off with how are you doing, right? And which is important because we should want to know how each other is doing, especially being in two different states, right? Um, but your day can just be so busy and or life can be life. And so I think it's important for us to kind of get a gauge of how things are going with one another,
yeah.
beyond, when we talk off camera, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. A lot of times we are moving so fast. It's like, how are you? And we just say good and it's fine. And we never, really check in on them emotionally. Like, how are you actually feeling? So I want to ask you the same question. How are you feeling today?
So today I am doing okay. Very busy today. Started off kind of slow this morning, but then kind of gained some momentum. But I have been running with clients and then personal oil change, different things, and then I knew we had to record today. So busy, but feeling okay, definitely. Actually feeling well. No complaints over here.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So, listen, if you are new to our channel, please subscribe, like, and share. And so I'm excited about today's topic. As always, I'm excited about every topic, right? Listen, but today's topic, we're going to be discussing pretty much like who are you beyond your titles, right? And I think that that's so important. I know last episode, if you have not watched it, it just came out. But it is more so on what do you enjoy doing beyond, your everyday routine, beyond work, beyond the relationships that you have. Do you know what you really enjoy? I think this episode here allows you to go deeper in knowing who you really are, right? Not just what you enjoy doing, but so often I notice when you ask someone, who are you, right? They go off into giving you their titles of what they do for a living, or even just their titles in their roles of I'm a mom, I'm a wife, all of the things that they are responsible for and what roles they have, but they really don't go into who they really are. They don't necessarily, when you ask them, sometimes some people are stumped about it. Like, oh, wait a minute, who am I? Like, oh, I gotta think about that, right? That's gonna take some time because I kind of lost myself and I don't really know who I am, right? And so I think that this topic is really important so people can start to think about who am I really, right? Beyond the titles, beyond what I do for a living, to the core of me. Who am I?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a big thing, right? Because if we think about it, if those titles, right, go away and we don't know who we are, there we go in crisis, right? Trying to figure out who we are because we're so used to being moms and now our kids is going to college and they don't need us. Or we're so used to working and now it's time to retire. What do I do with my time? So
Right.
it's like, a lot of those, situations, if we know who we are without those titles attached to us, oh man, we can almost do anything in a sense, right? Because we know who we are, right? We could define us and our ability to accomplish the things we want to accomplish.
Right. So so even with that, right? Like so you're saying, okay, so in having all of the roles that you may have, or even if you are, in a position, right, and you give the title of whatever that may be, if that goes away, then you feel like you lost a sense of identity because that's how you identified yourself.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm hearing you say. Like, so who are you beyond what you do. That's not your identity. That's what you actually do for a living, or that's actually a role that you have.
Yeah. And you more
Hmm.
than that, right? And as an
Right.
individual, we should want to be, in a sense, more than that,
Yeah.
to be able to have that sense of identity that is not attached to a title. So
Yeah.
big to find.
Because in you knowing who you are and being able to identify and know who you are, you show up authentic. And
Mhm.
you would know if you're putting on a facade. So often people may wear a mask. I know I talk about that often, like, right? So people send their representatives. They may wear a mask because they feel like in this particular environment, I need to be this way. And then when I'm with this person or in this environment, I need to put on this face or this hat, right? But really just being authentic to who you truly are at the core of who you are, showing up in any environment as yourself so that you can operate with authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that that's so big because you bring up a good part of like, even in the sense of stress and burnout, right? When we think of those things, they come really into play when we don't know how to take a break, when we don't know what we need for our body to, rejuvenate, to recharge ourselves, because we don't know who we are. We just so attached to these titles, and these titles, they don't ever end in a sense, right? But as self-identifying of who I am as a person, I know I'm no good without 7 hours of sleep. That's just who I am. I know I need me a cup of coffee to start my morning. That's just who I am. That ain't nothing attached to a title. It's not my job. It's not how I make money. It's just things that I need to get my day going for me, right? And so
Okay.
knowing that, right, that burnout, if I know that I need a break, then I could take that break to avoid that burnout.
Okay. So you're saying, listen, I know what I need to start my day. I know what fuels me. I know that I need X amount of hours of sleep to be refreshed and focused. So knowing what you need is one aspect of it, right? And
Mhm.
then going in with who am I at my core is like, do I know my personality traits? Do I know the traits that I possess that are mine that make me who I am, right? um in describing yourself, right, you think about, or you should think about, like, if someone was to ask, like, who am I would likely tell them, um at my core, I am a driven person. I am a compassionate person. I'm also a child, a woman of God. So my faith, my belief, that's a part of me. That's who I
Mhm.
am. So knowing specifically, like, what it is about me, my personality traits that make me who I am at my core. Um, I am one that is generous, right? I can be one, or not can be. I am one that is very much compassionate. So I care about people and their well-being.
Mhm.
That also shows up in what I do for a living, but at my core, that's just my personality to care about humans. And, it can be so many other traits, and I do have other traits that make up who I am, but I'm giving a few examples so people hopefully can start to think about who they really are, showing up as their authentic self, not being afraid of, okay, if I say I'm this or that. Some people will say, I'm funny, but sometimes I don't want to, show that side of me because I don't know if they will receive it, or I don't know if people will say, you too silly, or, but if you're funny and if you enjoy humor, And that's something that is a part of you. You wouldn't want to shut off a part of you. You want people that to receive you as you are. And if they're not accepting of you, then that's on them. But you have to have self-acceptance. So when you think about who you are, you really got to show up as that person, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, got to walk that path, right? And so you bring up some good things, right? It's stripping away those titles and identifying, like even like you said, those internal, self compassion, being generous, things like that. That plays into, even knowing what brings you that, right? Like what created me to becoming who I am, right? And so that is also knowing, like for myself, right? If I'm a person, who really enjoys, to be alone, and I'm a loner, like that's kind of how I really see fit. Now, do I know I can't live like that? 100%, right? Career, family, friends, we have all this. But if you enjoy your alone time, and that is at the core of like, okay, I am okay with the idea of being alone. It ain't for others to come and intrude and tell you that's not good. That's got to change. That can't work, because that is what you identify as. And I think that that's where the connection of, like you said, what you identify as and how you see, that balance, that fit in your life. So I think that that's going to be so important to really sit down and, what do I identify as? If I take away those titles, what do I identify as? Like, just me.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say, if I am, as it relates to my personality trait being an introvert, right? Like, so I like to be alone at times, or I am more comfortable in being in my own solitude. That's a part of who you are. That's just your personality. That's your makeup. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And so, not where someone will be changing that or changing you, they will be accepting of, okay, so this person is one that likes solitude. And at
Right.
times, whoever they have relationships with, they build those relationships around who they are and that person accepting them.
And it's truly accepting them.
Yeah.
That is who they are. Not, oh, I'm gonna keep bringing them out to get them out they feel. No, it's, that person who they are. That's why you was drawn to them. That's why for some odd reason you connected with them based off of who they are. So
Right.
it's, making sure we're not trying to change, individuals as well, but just sitting with ourselves, taking our titles away. What do we want to identify? We might want to identify as being outgoing. That doesn't mean that you want to, right?
Mhm.
You may
Yeah.
not be that person, and giving that grace, that respect to other people as we want for ourselves. So like you said, when it goes back to, humor is who you are at the core, you can truly feel I can go and be who I am without the judgment of others, and, stopping or putting the boundaries around my personality.
Yeah, definitely. That's so important for people to realize that you do want to show up as your authentic self, and knowing that, because when someone comes around, or even when we describe someone, right? You know how it's always someone in the family that's the jokester, right?
Yeah.
And that's a part of their personality, right? Like, hey, when this person come, we're gonna have a good time, we're gonna laugh. They're going to crack a joke, make, say something funny, do all of the things. But that's, you're likely expecting that of them because you waiting on them. You like, listen.
This is what we expect.
Okay, yeah. So I think that that's so important for people to start to really just sit with themselves, identify who they are beyond the titles and roles, so that
Mhm.
they know for themselves, and they can describe themselves and show up as their authentic self and not with a mask on.
Right, right. And it's almost like reclaiming your joy. So it's almost like putting it out there, because you know how when, we're younger, we are just authentically ourselves. Kids just kind of just do, no matter if they know it's right or wrong, they just being themselves, just whatever it looks like, right?
Yeah.
But as adults, we become more in these boundaries of, like you said, we can't do this. People judging judge us, or we don't feel that we can just put ourselves out there without the world looking at us with these binoculars like, oh no. So being able to reclaim that joy by being yourself, by walking that path and just being just happy for who you are without the pressure of others, that's a beautiful experience.
Right. I mean, I'm hearing you say, okay, so often people may not show up as themselves because they're not knowing if they're going to be accepted.
Yeah.
So that acceptance piece, and that often can happen even in children like middle school, high school. They struggle with whether or not they're going to be accepted, so they might not show up. But when we think about the little kids that we know and in the family, or just even kids in general, right? They don't think necessarily, they haven't gotten to that point of, is this acceptable or not? And so I'm going to conform to what everybody else think I should be or how I should behave, right? When they're little, they're curious, they're learning themselves, and they're just open and honest, and so they show up.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, they really get to be themselves until something switches, where whether they are told, don't you do that, or
Yeah.
you know.
And I think that takes it back to the regular of just being joyful, happy as kids and what it is, and then we lose that. And
Mhm.
so that's why when I say it's about reclaiming your joy, it's going all the way back to when that didn't matter no more. When before the judgment of the eyes and the peers came into play, before society came trying to change personality, or you shouldn't like this or you should like that, or these gender roles they force onto people before all of that. So that's where it goes back to reclaiming that joy, that innocent joy that once used to be, but now we care so much that we're not walking authentically ourselves anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It was once where the self-acceptance was all you needed, right? And getting back to that piece I'm accepting of me, and if you want to be in relationship with me, you would have to be accepting of me.
Yeah.
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 And
It's
not that you can't want anything to change. So not, definitely not that, right? But you accept who you are and you work on yourself as the things that you are not pleased with or you would like to change. But just being able to show up
yes.
as your authentic self and not having to wear the mask and not feeling like, okay, so if I do this or do that, I don't know how I'm going to be received, so I'm just not going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's almost one of them things that we could accomplish anything and it would succeed. Would you? No matter what it was. If I could go out there and just be funny, would I just do it? If I know that I can do it successfully, if I can go out there and be confident and just demand the room, would I do it if I know I could succeed? A lot of times we get stuck with that, the sense of failure, fear, and it stops us. And so we don't walk that path. We just kind of hide behind those titles in a sense. I'm like, so it's easier to say when you say, Alicia, who are you? It's easy for me to say, I'm a mom. I'm this. I work here. I do, it's easy. That's the easy part, right? But when you ask those difficult questions, then I have to really face who I am to answer that question. This is who I am because, of course, you could name all the good qualities, but when we ask who you are, they're gonna be some bad qualities because we're human and we are flawed. So I think that that's important as well. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing at all.
Okay. So I hear you. Listen, because when I think about just, I hear you saying, okay, so you may have some bad qualities, right? I would say, I don't know if, when I think about myself, I'm only speaking for me because I can't speak for nobody else.
Mhm.
I don't know if I have, no, I don't believe I have any bad qualities. I don't believe myself. Can't speak for nobody else.
That's a, but
I,
then that's the biggest thing because you are identifying you. And so that's the important part.
Yeah, so I'm saying like, so if someone, because say if, you know, somebody's like thinking, oh, well, wait, not that some people don't think that they may have a negative trait or a negative quality about themselves that they want to work on. I'm not saying that people don't have them because they exist and we know they exist. But I also know that there is, for me, when I look at my or think about who I am, even if it's something that I want to change, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad quality. I think that whether I need to develop in an area, you know how we all have weaknesses. And I think that's what you're saying, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. But I think you're saying, okay, so we all have weaknesses, which we do. And we need to know what our weaknesses are so we don't carry shame and guilt around a weakness. A weakness is not, for me, a negative. So I'm hoping that people, when they're hearing this, they don't take a trait and think, oh my gosh, this is so bad. And then, take on this, um, negative aspect of it versus this is an area that I need to develop in. And this is something I identify as being a weakness of mine. And I want to definitely work on it, but not to look at a weakness as it being a negative.
So I think it's going to be based off of how you want to term definitions, right? Because a bad trait to a negative trait to a weakness, right? They all could mean the same thing in a sense because everything should be wanting to be improved in any sense. You could have a great trait, but that don't mean it can't get better. I could be great at being compassionate, but that don't mean I can't be compassionate or being more compassionate, right? There is a way to always improve, right? So I guess when you, even in a sense of terms, it depends on does that term almost, and I don't want to use the word offend because a lot of times too, when you use terms as like a negative or a bad, and people like, oh, I don't like that or I don't like that attached to me. But, let's just say for a person who is nosy and they like, I'm just a nosy person, for them, that might be a bad trait, a negative trait. It might be a weakness of theirs because they're in other people's business and they're not focusing on their own, right? It just depends on the how you want to identify in a sense of if that terms offend you to you prefer a better term of because any of those traits in general we all should work to be better, so we all should be looking for improvement.
Okay. So you're saying, and I'm just, okay. So you said if you have a trait and you could be good with the trait, right? Like, so you could have a trait and you can be good at that trait, right? Like, and you're saying, but you should always be wanting to improve the trait.
Yes. So even though you say my trait is I am compassionate,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean every area in your life you couldn't be more compassionate, right? I couldn't give grace even more in this area. Maybe I'm compassionate at home, but I'm not compassionate at work. Maybe I'm compassionate when it comes to my kids, but other people kids, when they come around, I lose that compassion that I feel for children or something, right? Just depending on who you are. But there is, in a sense, let's just say, you know, every last trait isn't at the sense of it can't get better. Like I just don't think that we have reached the idea of perfection that you just have, or anyone, not you, but you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Anyone have reached the idea of I have accomplished being generous. I don't need to learn, or there's nothing more I can give or to learn about being generous, right? There is always a way of learning, right? There's always a way of doing more because I mean, let's
Okay.
be fair.
Well, no, because
Most humorous,
when I'm hearing you, right?
right?
Um, because I'm hearing you say this, and this is the first time that I feel like we've had an episode, and I'm like, okay, so I don't agree with that, right? I'm like, okay, so if you're compassionate, and you gave the example of you could be more compassionate in another area, or you could be more compassionate with somebody else's kids. um, than another. Or if you are generous, you could be more generous in another area. So when I think about a trait of someone having that, possessing that trait, right? If I'm a generous person, that's just it. I'm a generous person. If I'm a caring person, that's just it. I'm a caring person. I'm not going to pick and choose who I'm going to necessarily be more caring to, or if I could be more caring to this person or that person. If it just is where I'm caring, that is that's my trait. That's what I possess as a person, that I just am. I don't believe that there is no perfect, right? We both don't believe there's no perfect. We talked about it before. That's an illusion. So it's never that the trait. I don't think that you're ever should be striving to be perfect in a trait. It is no perfect. It really is. Perfect is your best.
Mhm.
So that's where people, I think, get mixed up with. If you're striving to be perfect, it's an illusion. And so who defines what perfect really is? Because someone else will define it to be different. So it really is, if I've given my best, then that's that. And I have to be accepting. It goes back to my own self-acceptance. So if I have these traits that I'm saying identifies who I am, then I would think, for me, these are the traits that make up who I am. This is my core. I don't think, for me, I need to improve the traits necessarily anymore. They just exist in making up who I am as my core. So I'm not saying that I can't be. I guess maybe it comes off, or I'm thinking in my mind, if these are my core traits and this is who I am, it makes up of who I am. I That's just me. That's just who I am. It's not even about.
So when I think about it in a sense, right? Even if you want to combine all the lanes and say I'm a caring person, so I'm caring at work, I'm caring at home, and I'm caring with my friends. If I combine all those lanes and say I'm just a caring person, however, there's more to it that I don't know. So I could be caring all that I want, but I don't know every avenue when it comes to, maybe I can care more in a different way. Maybe I can care in, this, like a different aspect of that idea, but it's like pulling back because there's more to it to learn. So even though I feel like I'm a caring person, there's I'm pretty sure someone or somehow I can look at my life and I can find and identify ways where I'm like, man, I could have cared a little more, or I could have put a little more there. I could be self-satisfying in the sense of, knowing me and knowing that I am a caring person, but that's still not looking at myself and saying, okay, just because I understand that I'm caring don't mean that that can't get better, right? Just because I am, this person who just always calling, just checking and doing those check-ins and caring and being there for this person day in and day out, there's still other parts of this idea of caring, this huge umbrella of caring that I can tap into. And so I just think that every trait, in a sense of like, even in myself, right? There's ways that I can do it better. I can get better at it, even though it's my trait. I'm a caring person, but that doesn't mean I can't do it better. I can't try more. I can't put myself out there more. Not in the sense of it's not good enough, but maybe I just want to keep going. I want to, see what
Well,
else.
I feel like it never stops, right? If you're caring, then that's, you're
Right.
saying that's a part of me. It's not about. I think it's just who you are at your core. So when you say I'm caring, but I could care more, or I could, so it's like I could do more. So I'm thinking we're not talking about doing.
So no, we're not, right? So when I say I can care more about it, even in the sense of just the idea of caring, like, okay, I can feel like me saying, how is your day, is me showing that I'm caring. As I grow and I'm still a caring person, that caring trait grows with me, right? So it can evolve. And now I'm actually checking in and so can you tell me what's really going on with your day that making you feel sad versus just the normal, how are you doing? Because that was a caring statement by me asking. I feel like I'm caring. That's how I put myself out there. It shows that I'm caring by doing this. This is what I identify as caring.
Hmm.
But I'm saying now I'm growing. I'm looking at other things. And because I'm caring, oh, wow, I see that she actually, bought food for a person who was sad versus just asking how they doing. She took them out to, a drink versus just simply asking. Now my trait of caring have evolved. It's another level of caring. It's a deeper level or expanded, but I'm still caring as a person.
Okay. I hear you. Okay.
So
And
it's like,
I would say that's a gesture. I would say that you saying, okay, so I'm going to another level with my care. I'm extending my care to another level.
well,
So,
I'm expanding my horizons of what caring is identified as. Because at first I thought caring was this. This is why I said I was caring. Because I thought me doing these actions or me doing these steps, or even if you take away from it and just say I'm not doing no steps, but I thought of the person and I just thought that that was caring. Now my caring have evolved as I have evolved, and now I'm caring in a different sense of maybe I'm praying for that person, right? Might not be doing a gesture of giving or doing anything that is a physical or tangible thing, but maybe the way I think about it, I thought I cared about let's say the homeless, right? But now I'm over here like, wow, I can't sleep at night thinking about it, right? It's a different level of a sense of caring, even though I'm still a caring person.
okay.
So it just, I think it's just one of the things that is what they say. Two people can.
Oh, definitely, yeah, because it really is. So that's the importance about, I think, with the dialogue, right? Because we have a perspective view that is different in the sense of when you think about our traits and just really the core of who you are, it's not different in the sense of, okay, so I think we're saying similar things, but it is different because you're saying as you evolve, the likeliness is how your traits are will evolve with you, or you may do more, or you saying if it's not this, it's still when you gave the example, the gesture I said gesture, as it relates to doing something for someone. And a gesture is not just financially or buying them something, right? The gesture could be praying. It could be whatever that looks like or is. So I think that it just really is communication and how people perceive things. And I think that's important because whoever sees the podcast, the episode, they could be thinking from the same lens. And
Yeah.
so it can really be where they're like, okay, so I think that I could be doing more in the area of the traits of identifying who I am. Or I think that I do know my capacity, and this is the core traits of me, but I also have a capacity of what I give to others or how I go about showing up in who I am. So I don't, I think it's a good thing that we talk and communicate what our thoughts are because we are two different people having different perspectives, and it's okay for us to have that. So yeah, I think that
Yeah,
this was
I think that
good.
that's a very important part, right? Because it is okay to have that. And that's the thing about taking even away the titles, right? When we take away your titles and you look at your personality traits, our personality traits, we're different people,
Right.
right? We took away our titles as moms, we took away our titles as, clinicians and things like that. But now as an individual, we still see how personality traits develop, grow to versus this is it and this is it, right? Like we still see things differently because we are who we are at our core. And so I think that that's the huge thing of showing that it's okay
Yeah.
to be different. It's
Yeah.
okay not to have the same traits as someone else. And
Mhm.
it's okay to see your traits differently, right? And how they are going to, because again, there's no right or wrong, right? There
Exactly.
ain't no such thing as, this is what it is, and traits is this, and they don't move and they stay. And there no such thing that this is what it is, traits is 100% is going to evolve as you evolve. Maybe not, right? It's the opinion of this is how I see traits going, right?
Mhm.
When I look at myself, how you view yourself.
Mhm.
So I don't think there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's definitely the fact or the subject of the core of who you are and how you come to know yourself is really important, and accepting yourself unconditionally,
Yeah.
even with you wanting to do work, right? Even with you wanting to, if there's areas that you know that you need to work on, if you want to develop, but still accepting where you are right now and who you are so that you can get to that place. But you are so much more than your title, your role, and all of the responsibilities that you may have. So I think that that's really key. I'm hoping that that was definitely the takeaway for people. But also, I really feel like I'm glad that we're able to have conversations because people need to know that you will have different dialogue and conversations amongst friends, amongst family, amongst colleagues, whomever you come in contact with, because you have those diverse relationships. And it's okay to have different perspectives and views on things. And just know that people come from different lenses.
That is so true. That is so true. And like you said, just knowing when you are very comfortable, even in your own identity, it's easy for you to be able to have those different, lenses, right? Seeing it from a different lens and being okay to say, this is how I see it because I'm comfortable and
Mhm.
I know who I am. So yeah, I definitely huge takeaway. Big takeaway. I
Definitely.
love that.
I do too. So listen, if you do not know who you are, please sit with yourself and identify who you are at the core of yourself and accept yourself unconditionally. Remove the mask. And so also, if you are new to our channel, please share, like, and subscribe.
Thanks. See you next time.
Alrighty.